Max Verstappen has absolutely let rip. And let us be perfectly honest. The atmosphere within Red Bull Racing has never been this toxic since those new Ford power units first roared into life. The sudden cancellation of the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian rounds, triggered by the escalating conflict in Iran, has ripped a 5-week void into the 2026 calendar. While the rest of the grid might see this as a providential breathing space for the Milton Keynes squad, it is a technical catastrophe without precedent. And let us be frank about this, seeing Max Verstappen sweating blood just to keep an Alpine behind him, only to be effortlessly picked off by a Mercedes, was not on anyone's 2026 script. This isn't just a simple case of lacking a bit of pace. The rot goes much deeper than that. Verstappen made no effort to mask his fury after the shambles in China, where a critical thermal failure within the energy recovery system knocked him out of the race while he was desperately scrapping for a mere 5th place against Oliver Behrman's Haas. If we take a moment to really scrutinize the situation, the Red Bull 22 was promised as an asphalt-shredding predator, but it has delivered nothing but technical indigestion. Isaac Hadjar hit the nail on the head when he admitted the car has zero grip and no mechanical soul. You have to ask yourself, how can a team that once dictated the laws of aerodynamics now look so utterly bewildered by a basic setup? The answer lies in the botched integration with Ford. While Ferrari and Mercedes have mastered the dark arts of battery deployment over decades, Red Bull Ford is still flailing around, trying to figure out how to deliver power without literally frying every internal component. There is a glaring detail that many are overlooking. This April hiatus is pure poison for a brand new engine manufacturer. As Hadjar pointed out, the more we race, the more we understand. Without track time, there is no real-world telemetry. Without telemetry, Red Bull Ford is essentially operating in pitch-black darkness, while their rivals at Brackley and Maranello are refining their simulators with rock-solid data. It is the quintessential case of being promised a rocket ship only to be handed a tractor, and that tractor desperately needs mileage to evolve into something competitive. Will Laurent Mekies and Pierre Waché manage to solve the catastrophic thermal efficiency issues of their energy recovery system during this forced break? Or are we witnessing the final straw for Max Verstappen as he begins to look very closely at the vacancies opening up elsewhere on the grid? If Red Bull cannot provide a car that functions above 90 degrees Celsius without melting its own internals, the 4-time world champion might just decide he has had enough of this American experiment. Have you ever noticed how a project with far too many chiefs and not enough soldiers always ends in a complete and utter shambles? Well, the Audi Revolut Formula One team has just learned that lesson the hard way. What was supposed to be the dream team of German engineering excellence has degenerated into a toxic battlefield of inflated egos. Jonathan Wheatley, the man who served as the very backbone of Red Bull Racing and arrived in Nürburgring with the reputation of a technical messiah, has officially handed in his notice. And let us be perfectly honest here. Nobody walks away from a project of this magnitude in less than 1 year unless the internal atmosphere has become absolutely unbearable. If we take a moment to really scrutinize the situation, this partnership between Jonathan Wheatley and Mattia Binotto was essentially a ticking time bomb from day one. On one side, you had the relentless, high-pressure school of Milton Keynes. On the other, you had the Binotto style, heavily political, bureaucratic, and obsessively focused on the factory floor. Reports from deep inside the paddock suggest that the clashes, the legendary rowing sessions, were a daily occurrence. The chief executive officer of Audi, Gernot Döllner, had already identified that this dual leadership structure was an administrative Frankenstein's monster as far back as the end of 2025, yet he chose to kick the can down the road rather than admit a catastrophic hiring blunder. Now, you have to ask yourself, who actually suffers when the top brass are too busy arguing over who holds the most power? Exactly, the drivers. While the management is locked in a civil war, the car on the track looks like a technical bodge job. Both Gabriel Bortoleto and Nico Hülkenberg have already endured the nightmare of multiple did-not-start classifications due to bizarre hydraulic failures and mechanical gremlins right at the start of this 2026 season. It is the classic bait and switch. They promised a structure built on elite German technology, but they delivered a political quagmire that even the immense talent of our young Brazilian star cannot possibly mask. Carlos Sainz traded the Maranello glamour for a promise of glory at Grove, but the 2026 reality has hit home with the force of a concrete wall. There is a razor-thin line between a work in progress and an unmitigated disaster, and the Spaniard has just confirmed that Williams has well and truly crossed that border. While Red Bull and Audi are bickering over engines and egos, Williams seems to have forgotten the absolute basics: how to put a car on the grid that doesn't weigh as much as a heavy goods vehicle. Let us be perfectly blunt. If we take a proper look at the expression on the face of Carlos Sainz in Shanghai, it wasn't the look of a man who had just managed to scrape into the points. It was the look of someone who realized he had stepped onto a sinking ship with holes larger than the hull itself. The duality here is nothing short of cruel. On one hand, Williams sacrificed the entire 2025 season, swearing that the 2026 Challenger would be a disruptive masterpiece. On the other, they have delivered a chassis that is, by some margin, the slowest among those powered by a Mercedes unit. There are whispers in the paddock that the atmosphere in technical meetings led by James Vowles is even heavier than the car itself. And trust me, that Atlassian Williams 48 is fighting the scales as if it were at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Carlos Sainz pulled no punches during his latest debrief, stating there are far too many problems in far too many areas. We are not just talking about excessive weight, which is reportedly several kilograms over the limit, utterly killing any hope of fighting for a podium, but a chronic lack of downforce. The car simply refuses to stick to the tarmac in high-speed corners. You have to ask yourself, how can a team boasting the likes of Pat Fry and James Vowles ignore fundamental physics? The telemetry data does not lie, and the lap time deficit compared to the young Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes is a massive blow to the gut for any seasoned veteran. If the car is overweight and lacks aerodynamic pressure, what is left? The driver. And this is where the technical nuance gets truly interesting. With the motor generator unit, heat removed from the 2026 regulations, the dreaded turbo lag has returned to haunt the grid. It is as if you plant your foot on the accelerator and the engine replies via second-class post, taking precious milliseconds to actually deliver the power. Sainz revealed he is focusing obsessively on his race starts just to compensate for the fundamental flaws of the chassis. He had mega launches in Australia and China, but driving on the absolute ragged edge of an accident just to defend a lowly 9th position is a heartbreaking waste of talent. One has to wonder why Frédéric Vasseur appears so completely unbothered regarding the new engine compression ratio inspections that the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile intends to implement this June. The reason is quite simple. He is well aware that the technical plot is far thicker than it appears on the surface. Scuderia Ferrari HP's absolute trump card for the 2026 season carries the cryptic title of Advanced Digital Unit Optimization. With the sudden cancellation of the Middle Eastern rounds, the definitive technical assessment was pushed back to the Monaco Grand Prix, creating a massive opportunity. And this is precisely where the technical bombshell is set to detonate. If the Maranello engineers can prove that their power unit is trailing between 2% and 4% behind the Mercedes AMG Petronas, they gain the regulatory right to unleash a massive evolution. This single update could, quite literally, nullify the current advantage held by the Brackley squad in a single weekend. It is a masterful interpretation of the performance balancing rules, leaving rivals wondering if they have been outplayed before the European leg even begins in earnest. There is a subtle detail that very few observers in the paddock are picking up on. Ferrari has engineered the Scuderia Ferrari 26 to sit on the absolute bleeding edge of the starting procedure regulations. George Russell has already spent a significant amount of time complaining over the radio, claiming that the Italian team is effectively blocking essential changes to energy recovery systems just to maintain an unfair advantage when the 5 red lights go out. Vasseur's response to these accusations was a masterclass in elegant, calculated arrogance. The team principal essentially gave a classic, dismissive, "I am terribly sorry" shrug, stating that his team designed their car to the letter of the law and has zero intention of allowing the rules to be altered just to accommodate a rival's shortcomings. It is the signature confidence of a man who knows he has discovered a golden loophole. While others are busy moaning to the race stewards, Maranello is perfecting a system that allows Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc to catapult off the line with devastating efficiency, exploiting every millimeter of the current framework. However, it is certainly not all sunshine and roses in Italy, which brings us to a massive curiosity gap. Charles Leclerc has openly admitted that he is far from being a fan of this particular car. The Scuderia Ferrari 26 does not seem to speak the Monegasque driver's language. It is a twitchy, nervous machine that is notoriously difficult to tame during the crucial phase of corner entry. This is the exact opposite of the stable, predictable platform that Charles traditionally thrives upon when searching for those final thousandths of a second.